Yo, what is up guys? Ethan here back in another video, and today it is draft season on my channel, and you know what this means: mock drafts, QB rankings, all of that. And today I'm going to be giving you my first mock draft of this draft season. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. So, but a few things before I hop in. I have looked at some film on some of these prospects already, but not most of them. So, by the next mock draft, hopefully the majority of the prospects I've gone over film with. But for this video in specific, I've only looked at a few. So, the majority of my rankings right now are based off of what the media is saying, what I've seen in the games, and just overall stats, and of course besides the players I already looked at film with. So without any more interruptions, let's get straight into my first mock draft. And with the first pick in the NFL draft, this should not be a surprise to any viewer. We got Trevor Lawrence going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Overall, this is probably the best quarterback prospect we have seen since Andrew Luck, arguably, maybe even Peyton Manning, and if you're an old head, maybe even John Elway. So, either way, Trevor Lawrence is one of the best quarterback prospects we have seen going into the NFL. And since this is going to be a long video, I'm not going to talk about it since we basically know a lot about him already. So, let's go to pick 2. And with the second overall pick, I have the New York Jets selecting Zach Wilson, quarterback from BYU. Now, even though I am actually one of the people who think the Jets should not draft a quarterback and go run it again with Sam Darnold, this mock draft is priority on what I think is going to happen. And with this pick, I think the Jets are just going to want a new look, a new future, and they're going to go want Zach Wilson. And if you are one of the people who think the Jets should go out and get a quarterback, you probably are saying, why not Justin Fields? Even though I do think Wilson and Fields are actually both a tad overrated on what the media says about them, I personally think Zach Wilson is a little bit more NFL ready than Justin Fields. He's more polished, and even though I do think Fields has a little bit more potential, I think with how the Jets are going to want things, they're going to try to win as fast as possible, and they're not going to want to wait. So I personally think the Jets are going to select Zach Wilson with the second overall pick. With the third overall pick, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Penei Sewell, offensive tackle from Oregon. And now with this pick, it's either just Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase, or Devonta Smith. And even though it could be a dark horse tackle candidate, the only two people I can really see the Dolphins selecting here is Sewell and Smith, unless they trade the pick for like a Deshaun Watson. And I personally think they're going to go the route with protect Tua with this first pick, and here's why. I think with this receiver class, you do have a second pick later on, and I think you're not going to draft Devonta Smith with this first pick. Penei Sewell is one of the best tackle prospects we've seen in a long time, maybe since Trent Williams came out of Oklahoma, and that's pretty good. We've seen how Trent Williams is, and Penei Sewell is a franchise tackle that the Dolphins need. You need to protect Tua, and I do think you can definitely get him another weapon later on in this draft. So I think the Dolphins will get the I think you know what I'm trying to say, the great prospect in Penei Sewell. With the fourth overall pick, I have my Atlanta Falcons selecting Justin Fields, quarterback from Ohio State. And yes, I know with Arthur Smith coming in and Matt Ryan still on the team, you may say, why get a quarterback? And personally, I don't think Justin Fields is going to be a good starter if he plays immediately, just like what he would probably do if he was with the Jets. I think he needs to take a Patrick Mahomes type route, sit behind a good quarterback for a year or two, and then play, as I do think he would be ready after a season or two behind Matt Ryan. And ultimately, the new GM Terry Fontenot, he said he's going to go with the best player available, and he's not going to go in needs. And he did say we have a great wide receiver group. And I think the best player available is Devonta Smith or Ja'Marr Chase. But with how great our wide receiver corp is, I think he's going to go with the next player or best player available. And that, in my opinion, is Justin Fields. And also, he grew up in Atlanta and all that. So this is probably a perfect fit for Justin Fields. And with the 5th overall pick, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Patrick Surtain, the second cornerback from Alabama. Our first surprising pick of the draft. And you may say, they need an offensive tackle. Why not offensive tackle? I really don't think, or I don't see two tackles being drafted in the top 5. And since Sewell's already off, I don't think you're going to draft a tackle with your 5th overall pick. And I think you're going to wait until round 2. And then you say, why not a wide receiver? AJ Green's getting old. And besides Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, you have nobody. Number 1, I think T. Higgins is going to really improve this year. And I really think the depth of that receiver core is actually underrated for the Bengals. And also looking at the cap room and the free agency, there is a lot better wide receivers in this free agent market this year than cornerbacks. And Patrick Surtain, I think, is a generational talent at that position. And since cornerback is probably one of your top 4 needs, go out and get your future cornerback and pairing up with William Jackson to have a dynamic duo in the secondary alongside with Jessie Bates at safety. With the 6th overall pick, I have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver from LSU. And unless Patrick Surtain is still on the board, which he's not in this case, I think the Eagles are 100% going to draft a wide receiver. And you can go either way between Ja'Marr Chase and Devonta Smith. But I mainly have 2 reasons why I have Chase instead of Devonta Smith. 3. Number 1, if Joe Brady is your quarterback, that's just a plus. Number 2, you just selected Jaylen Reagor in the 1st round last season. And if you look at their builds and their skill set, Reagor and Smith are actually more similar than you probably anticipate. And number 3, you should have drafted an LSU receiver last year, Justin Jefferson. And look what he's doing this year with Minnesota. And Ja'Marr Chase was better than Justin Jefferson last year. That's all I'm going to say. You get your LSU receiver a year too late, but he could be better. Ja'Marr Chase to Philly. With the 7th overall pick, I have the Detroit Lions selecting Devonta Smith, wide receiver from Alabama. And if Devonta Smith is not any of your mock draft's top 10, I don't agree with you by any means. Devonta Smith just won the Heisman, arguably had the best wide receiver year in college football history, and he's been doing it for multiple seasons. Even when he was like the 2nd or 3rd option. Devonta Smith is going to be a special wide receiver. And if he falls past the Eagles, I think the Lions is actually a better fit. People don't really realize that Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay are free agents this year. So the Lions do have that possibility that both of their top 2 receivers could be gone next season. And personally, I don't think they're going to lose both. One is probably going to be out of Detroit. And I think if you do want to keep Matthew Stafford, you have to give him the weapons. And Devonta Smith by far is the best weapon available. Also, with the new head coach Dan Campbell coming in, he likes his tight ends to block. That means you're definitely going to see T.J. Hockenson probably not get as many targets and probably block more than we've seen last year. Stafford is going to need that wide receiver help and just get Smith on the team, and it's going to make an immediate impact. With the 8th overall pick, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle from Northwestern. And this is probably another surprising pick. And to be honest, I really haven't looked at film with Slater yet, so he could be lower on my next mock draft. But personally, I think the Panthers are not going to select a Micah Parsons here because they drafted all defense last year, and I think they're going to want their rookies to take another step up before they make another immediate impact on the defensive side of the ball. Also, I think they're gonna go run it out with Teddy Bridgewater for another season, and they're gonna draft their future quarterback in next year's draft, potentially trading up to get the hometown kid Sam Howell. And I think you do need protection for Teddy Bridgewater and that franchise quarterback upcoming anyway. And according to what I've seen by the media, multiple people, Rashawn Slater has tons of potential. He can play basically anywhere on the offensive line, and he was really good at Northwestern last year, and he's the second best tackle prospect. And with all that news, and with how bad the Panthers' offensive line is, in my opinion, this is a great pick right here by the Carolina Panthers. With the 9th overall pick, I have the Denver Broncos selecting Jaycee Horn, cornerback from South Carolina. Probably another surprising pick on this mock draft. And personally, I think the Broncos are going to go secondary here. I don't think they're going to go with Trey Lance at this pick, as I do think they're going to give Drew Lock one last season. And this actually could potentially be an edge rusher, depending on what happens with the Von Miller situation. And you may be wondering, why not Caleb Farley here? The differences between Caleb Farley and Jaycee Horn, I think they are actually very similar prospects. The only difference is Caleb Farley has more of an IQ, and Jaycee Horn, I think, is going to have way more potential. And I think not with just this pick, but with the entire draft, the Broncos are going to be very valuable on potential. And since I said Horn has more potential than Farley, I think the Broncos are going to select Horn with the 9th pick instead of Caleb Farley. With the 10th overall pick, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Caleb Farley, cornerback from Virginia Tech. And even though I said Jaycee Horn has more potential than Farley, I think Farley is going to have a better day one impact than Horn. And I think the Cowboys are actually going to do what the opposite what the Broncos are, and they're going to be drafting throughout the draft players that can have an impact immediately. And like I said, I think Farley is that. And also, just looking at the defenses, I think Caleb Farley would actually be a better fit with the Dallas Cowboys scheme than the Broncos scheme. So overall, with both cornerbacks, it's a win-win. It's really neck and neck between these two, but overall, I think Horn's going to be selected before Farley, and both of these destinations will both impact them and become better players. With the 11th overall pick, I have the New York Giants selecting Jaylen Waddle, wide receiver from Alabama. And if Waddle somehow falls to number 11, if the Giants don't draft him, Dave Gettleman has got to be fired. I know Micah Parsons is still on the board, and you do need linebacker help, but with the general talent of Waddle, and with the need for Daniel Jones to get more weapons, you should not pass up on Waddle. Waddle is arguably faster than Henry Ruggs, and Henry Ruggs is one of the fastest players in the NFL already. Also, he's a threat in the special teams, and knowing Joe Judge, he was a special teams coordinator up in New England. So I think Joe Judge is definitely going to take tons of advantages off of Waddle's game and put it in with the Giants' offense and in his special teams game. And even though I'm not sure if Waddle is a better receiver than Smith and Chase, I think Waddle fits really good with this New York Giants team, and this is a great pick both ends. With the 12th overall pick, I have the 49ers selecting Trey Lance, quarterback from North Dakota State. And if he somehow falls to number 12, the 49ers have to jump on it. And even though I'm not a big fan of Jimmy Garoppolo, I think Jimmy Garoppolo would start next year either way unless he's traded. And if you select Lance in the first round and you don't give up Garoppolo, I think if you bench Lance and let Jimmy Garoppolo start, that's going to impact both players and help them. And you do need a quarterback, and this pick is mainly for the future, not this upcoming season. And potentially if Garoppolo plays bad, I think with how Kyle Shanahan runs his offense, Lance could have a day one impact. And overall, knowing Kyle Shanahan, I think he would definitely take full advantage of what Trey Lance did. And I think Trey Lance could be a beast in this 49ers offense. With the 13th pick, I have the LA Chargers selecting Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle from Virginia Tech. And yes, I do know Kyle Pitts is still on the board, and if Hunter Henry leaves, you're not going to have a tight end. But personally, I think the Chargers will re-sign Hunter Henry, so you're not going to select the tight end. But I do think you need to focus on protecting your franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert. Christian Darrisaw, just like Rashawn Slater, I really haven't broke down his film, and they have also risen off the draft boards. So, just like Slater, I'm taking the media and experts' words with this pick. And I'm going to select, I'm not going to select, but I think the Chargers will select Christian Darrisaw at number 13. With the 14th overall pick, I have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Wyatt Davis, interior offensive lineman from Ohio State. And personally, I may be higher on Wyatt Davis than a few others, because it just seems like these Ohio State offensive linemen have been getting drafted later and later, and they just have been playing really good, like Jonah Jackson. I had him as like a mid to late second round pick. He was drafted in the 3rd, I believe, and he's been really good for the Lions. I think he plays for the Lions, but that's besides the point. The Vikings need interior offensive line or any guard to go along with Garrett Bradbury. And I think Wyatt Davis can play either the left or right guard and even center. So I think Wyatt Davis is by far the best interior offensive lineman in this draft. And you get him to get more run blocking for Dalvin Cook and more protection for Kirk Cousins. With the 15th overall pick, I have the New England Patriots selecting Kyle Pitts, tight end from Florida. And what do we realize with this Patriots offense? They just need weapons. And people are saying get a quarterback. I think they're going to trade for like a Gardner Minshew, actually. Or just trade for a quarterback like a Matt Stafford. They're not going to draft a quarterback, in my opinion. But they're going to trade for a quarterback and get that quarterback weapons. And Kyle Pitts is by far the best tight end in this draft. Arguably would be the 3rd best receiver if he played the position. Kyle Pitts is just very similar to Darren Waller, in my opinion. And Waller is arguably the 2nd or 3rd best tight end in the NFL. And I think that's what the Patriots need. The Patriots always seem to, they have good tight ends, and those tight ends produce. So I do think they're going to lean towards a tight end with this pick, and it's going to be Kyle Pitts. With the 16th overall pick, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting Kwity Paye, edge rusher from Michigan. And I think a lot of people may not like this pick, and they want a running back. But I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. Running backs don't get selected in the 1st round anymore. And if they do, it's at the late of the 1st round, not in the middle. And otherwise, I think they're going to re-sign Kenyon Drake anyways, and you still have Chase Edmonds. That's a pretty good running back core in my opinion. So I don't think they're going to go there. The top 3 tackles are already off the board. Also, you have Josh Jones, who could definitely develop. I could see a receiver here, but I really don't think they will. And I think they're going to focus on the defense. I was really tempted to get a Micah Parsons here, just in case Hassan Reddick does leave. But I think the Cardinals are going to give Reddick a big contract, and they really need edge help. And Kwity Paye, in my opinion, is the best edge rusher in this draft. So the Cardinals go ahead and pick him up. With the 17th overall pick, I have the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Micah Parsons, linebacker from Penn State. And this is probably the steal of the draft. And you may be saying, Mark, there's no way Micah Parsons falls this far. In this mock draft, he is. And there's always a really good player that falls. In this case, it's going to be Micah Parsons. The Raiders just need defense. And if Parsons falls this far, the Raiders cannot be that dumb enough and pass up on Parsons. They've made some stupid first-round picks like Damon Arnett. He was a mid to late 3rd round pick, and you selected him at like 19 last year. Whoever did that draft pick deserves to get slapped in the face multiple times. And if Micah Parsons is somehow still on the board at 17, and if you don't select him, you're going to be slapped a lot more. Parsons is a generational talent at the linebacker position. He can play edge. He can play linebacker, in my opinion. He's going to be a really good player in the NFL, and this is a must pick up for the Raiders. And with the 18th overall pick, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Rashod Bateman, wide receiver from Minnesota. If you are new to the channel, I'm just going to let you know, Bateman is probably one of my favorite players in this draft. He was one of my favorite players in college football last year for a reason. And this kid is going to be something special in the NFL. And you may say they're kind of similar to Parker, but I think Parker is more of a big physical receiver, while Bateman is a great route runner. I think he may be the best route runner in this draft besides Devonta Smith. And he can definitely catch some balls. No homo. That sounded weird. But this is a really good pick. The Dolphins need a receiver, and like I said, they are going to draft a receiver later in the draft. And if Bateman is still here, which he probably will, this would be a really good pickup for the Dolphins. And with the 19th pick, I have the Washington football team selecting Terrence Marshall Jr., wide receiver from LSU. And you may say this kid does not deserve to be in the first round, and I actually 100% disagree. Terrence Marshall was probably at the start of the season and throughout the season the only bright spot with that LSU offense. They just lost so much talent, and you may say Marshall didn't do good the year before. That's because Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were breaking records in the receiving game. And if they're breaking records, the other wide receivers are probably not getting as many targets. And still, Marshall was very impressive as that third wide receiver. And I'm not sure how he plays, because I really haven't gone deep into that. But all I know is he's going to be a really good wide receiver. He has a lot of potential. And for whatever quarterback Washington has next year and in the future, they're going to have a very scary wide receiver duo in Terry McLaurin and Terrence Marshall Jr. And with the 20th overall pick, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Elijah Vera-Tucker, interior offensive lineman from USC. And just like multiple other tackles, I'm really not familiar with Vera-Tucker. But I am aware of one thing. Multiple Bears fans that I know say they would be thrilled if AVT would be drafted in the first round. If you just look at this Bears team, what do they need? Offense, keyword. I know there's been multiple rumors, but I do think the Bears are going to stick with Mitchell Trubisky for one last season. And they arguably had the worst offensive line last year in the NFL. So if Trubisky does get that one last stance, he's going to need protection, especially in the interior. And Elijah Vera-Tucker, in my opinion, is the best available interior offensive lineman. With the 21st overall pick, I have the Indianapolis Colts selecting Rondale Moore, wide receiver from Purdue. And Rondale Moore is going to be an X factor in this draft. I've seen him go as high as pick 15 to the Patriots. I've seen him go as late as the early third round, which is just crazy in my opinion. Rondale Moore has had injury issues. He basically missed his entire sophomore year. At Purdue, he did miss a few games at the beginning of this season. And when he did play last year, it was a lot of short passes, so he really wasn't involved with the offense. But that freshman year alone, he was one of, if not the best receiver in college football his true freshman season. He's very fast. If it's not Kadarius Toney, he's the most agile wide receiver in this draft. He's a phenomenal route runner, and even for his size, he's actually pretty physical for his size. The Colts, this could be a quarterback, as Phillip Rivers just retired. But just like a few other teams, I think the Colts are going to trade for a quarterback and not draft one. And for whatever quarterback's at the helm for this Colts team, T.Y. Hilton is a free agent this year. Zach Pascal is a free agent this year. And I don't think Michael Pittman Jr. is ready to become that number one option in the receiving game. So I think they're going to select a wide receiver, and with this pick in specific, they're going to go with the in-state guy and Rondale Moore. With the 22nd pick, I have the Tennessee Titans selecting Gregory Rousseau, edge rusher from Miami. And I have a feeling tons of NFL people are saying, wow, he fell this far. I actually think Gregory Rousseau is going to fall a lot in this draft. And personally, if I see him go in the top 10, I'm just thinking two things. You don't watch college football, or you don't know Gregory Rousseau like a lot of people think he is. And unlike these people who opted out and they stayed with their draft value, I think Gregory Rousseau actually got really hurt by opting out, which is not his fault. But you may say, oh, he had 15.5 sacks. If I'm not mistaken, he had like 10.5 sacks in 3 games over a 12-game span. For his size, I do think he could be more of a very dominant tackle. Well, defensive tackle. But I personally think Gregory Rousseau's skill is way overrated. I do think he has a lot of potential like a lot of people think. But in my opinion, I don't think Gregory Rousseau is going to be as good as people anticipate. And that's why he falls right here to 22 to Tennessee, who is desperate for some defensive line help. And I think the Titans will take that risk with this potential in this case. And they're going to select the edge rusher from Miami. With the 23rd pick, I have the New York Jets selecting Joseph Ossai, edge rusher from Texas. And this pick actually may surprise you, as you may think the Jets definitely should go with offense with this pick. But with the hire of Robert Saleh and how he ran things in San Francisco, they needed a lot of people on that defensive line to go and pressure the quarterback. And I think they're going to select the edge rusher with this pick. Even though that Jets defensive line is probably the best thing with that defense. And they do have Quinn Williams, who's actually better than I actually anticipated this year. I think they're going to select the edge rusher just because of Robert Saleh's scheme. And also, the edge rusher is probably a top 5 need with this Jets team. So they're going to go with Joseph Ossai, who I'm not familiar with, but I do know he does have a lot of potential. So I think the Jets are going to go with the potential and defense with the 2nd overall pick, Ossai to New York. With this 24th pick, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Travis Etienne, running back from Clemson. And I know this kind of contradicts what I said with the Cardinals pick, but with the Cardinals, they have 2 really good running backs, and they could sign both of them. But for the Steelers' end, I'm not a big believer in James Conner. I do like Benny Snell, but I don't think he's a starting caliber running back. And with this 24th pick, if it's not a tackle with this pick or anything on the offensive line, they're going to go running back. And you may say, why not Najee Harris? And I personally think Big Ben's going to return this year. And this is probably the Steelers' last chance to go out and win a ring for Big Ben, as I think next year will be his final year. You go out and get Travis Etienne, who is not the most powerful or the most elusive, but he's a really good running back and probably is a really good receiving back. And I would probably say his rookie year, he will be like a poor man's version of Christian McCaffrey. Just imagine Christian McCaffrey in this offense for the Steelers. That's just going to be crazy. I think they're going to try and improve that defense, that offense. I don't think they're going to go defense because the defense mainly struggled because of tons of injuries. I could see an edge rusher if Bud Dupree leaves, but overall I think the Steelers will select a running back, and I think Etienne will fit the Steelers scheme a little bit more than Najee Harris. With the 25th pick, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Samuel Cosmi, offensive tackle from Texas. And I'm not the biggest fan of Samuel Cosmi, I would say. I do think he's a tad overrated as a tackle prospect, but I do think he is 100% deserving of a first-round pick. And the Jaguars, they do have decent tackles, but none of them are going to be that franchise tackle. I think Cosmi does have a little bit of potential with him, and I do think they're going to go with another offensive pick here. But if Cosmi's off the board and all the other tackles are off the board, I do think the Jacksonville Jaguars will select the best player available. but since one of the top tackles is still available, I think the Jaguars get him. With the 26th pick, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Zaven Collins, linebacker from Tulsa. And I think this is just a match made in heaven, and this could be the steal of the draft. Well, not the steal of the draft, but an underrated pick. Zaven Collins was an absolute beast in his time when he was with the Tulsa, and he's actually very underrated. I do think it's either people overrate him or underrate him. I've been seeing some mock drafts when he goes in the middle of the first, but I've also seen some when he goes in the middle or late second. I do think he's going to be drafted in the late first, early second, but Collins could be a big-time steal in this draft. And he can do it all. He can force fumbles, get interceptions, make sacks, and make plays in the passing game. I know this Browns team needs another edge rusher if Olivier Vernon leaves in free agency, and Zaven Collins can do that. But if not, and Olivier Vernon stays, he's a really good linebacker, and pairing up with Mack Wilson, that linebacking core is going to be really good, and with this pick, you're just making that Browns defense even better. With the 27th overall pick, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver from USC. And with this first pick, I think the Ravens are going to go out and get a receiver. They definitely need a receiver. And if you look at the skill sets of St. Brown and Marquise Brown, they're complete different players. Marquise Brown is a speedster and a deep threat, while Amon-Ra St. Brown can play on the outside and in the slot. It just depends where the Ravens would use him. But he's a really polished route runner and a good catcher. He's not as speedy as I would like, and I do think he often gets overrated. But personally, I do think he's the best receiver on the board at this point. And I really do think he would actually be really good and a really good fit with this Ravens offense. With the 28th pick, I have the New Orleans Saints selecting Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback from Florida State. And kind of similar to what I said about the Denver Broncos, I think throughout the draft, the Saints are going to draft people with potential. Because I think they're going to try to run it back for one more year to try to get that ring, even though Drew Brees is most likely gone. But I do think they're going to draft potential, because if this year doesn't work, I think they're going to completely blow up this team, and they're going to need players with potential. And I think Asante Samuel is the best cornerback on the board. I think he has the most potential out of the cornerbacks on the board. And his father does have NFL experience, so he may have some knowledge. And if you look at the Saints cornerback room, or the secondary in general, besides Marcus Williams, who I think is a free agent, I could be mistaken, and Marshon Lattimore, that secondary is very old. So I think they're going to draft defense in the first round, exclusively in that secondary. And I think Asante Samuel is the best cornerback on the board and has the most potential. With the 29th overall pick, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Jeremiah OwUSU-Koramoah, or Koramoah, linebacker from Notre Dame. If you're watching this, I'm sorry I missaid your name, but I think this is a really good pick for the Buccaneers. Even as a Falcons fan, I hate the Bucs, but I had to give them a good player here. And this is actually a smart pick because it all depends on what's happening in free agency. Shaquille Barrett and Levante David are both free agents. And with all the free agents they have, they're not going to be able to re-sign everybody. This season, Koramoah showed how great of a linebacker he is in the passing game. But the year before, he actually showed he's a really good edge rusher as well, as he did have 8.5 sacks. So either way, he can play both positions, kind of similar to what we've seen with Micah Parsons in the past. And depending on which one leaves, as I think one stays and one doesn't, I think he would be a really good fit with this Buccaneers defense. And this is going to be a really good pick if he falls this far. With the 30th overall pick, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Eric Stokes, cornerback from Georgia. And in the past, I really wasn't a big fan of the Georgia corners into the draft, as I thought they were too physical. Eric Stokes does apply, I would guess, but he is going to be different. And this entire secondary in this draft for Georgia, I think is actually going to be a lot different with the Georgia secondary we've seen in the past. And Eric Stokes is a really good zone coverage cornerback, and overall, the Bills need a cornerback. And personally, with what I have seen and what the experts are saying, Stokes is going to be a really good cornerback. I'm not sure if he has the potential, but I do think he's going to be a day one impact. And him alongside Tre'Davious White, that could be a great duo up there in Buffalo. With the 31st overall pick, I have the Green Bay Packers selecting Tyson Campbell, cornerback from Georgia. And I'm not sure if this has ever happened, but back-to-back cornerbacks from Georgia, and it's actually for the same exact reason. Both teams, like the Bills, have a great cornerback, Tre'Davious White, Jair Alexander, but besides those guys, they need help in the secondary. Well, at the cornerback room. And since Stokes is gone, Campbell is the best cornerback, in my opinion, on the board. And just with that, I have the Packers selecting him. Also, before I go to my next pick, you may say a wide receiver. I'm pretty sure I'm convinced the Packers are never going to draft a wide receiver in the first round. So, I have Tyson Campbell going here at pick 31. And with the last pick in this mock draft, the Kansas City Chiefs just make their offense even more scary. They select Kadarius Toney, wide receiver from Florida. He's not the fastest, but he's probably by far the most agile wide receiver in this in this class. And you have the fastest player in the NFL in Tyreek Hill, and then you have the most agile player in the NFL and Kadarius Toney, well, at least for the wide receivers. This Chiefs wide receiver core is just getting even more dangerous. I'm pretty sure Sammy Watkins is on a few-year deal, but I'm not sure if you have that slot guy. And I think Kadarius Toney is going to excel in the slot in the NFL. And just having him, Hill, and Watkins, that is a great wide receiver duo. Just getting Patrick Mahomes even more weapons. And personally, I think this is a great match for both ends. So that is it for my mock draft 1.0. What players do you think I left out? What selections did you agree with and disagree with? And obviously, I didn't mention it until now. This draft does not have any trades. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this mock draft. Like, share, subscribe, and like always, have a good day. Peace out.